Hello, welcome to this Blender tutorial. I thought I would do something on rooms. So, rooms are something I've made a lot of in the past. When you're making a scene, often you're using an interior room. We're going to go domestic, just to keep it relatively simple to start with. And we'll start with what I'd like to call a room primitive. So I'm in Blender 3.1.2, and we'll start with the general scene. And as usual, we're going to delete this cube because I want to create it quite specifically. So if we go to add mesh and then cube, and I'm using Alt and my left mouse button to rotate around there, that will create us a standard cube which we can see down here, and we can modify our sizes and positions. So one thing to note is standard room sizes. I like to start with a standard room size. When you start going a bit creative and a bit crazy, you can get things out of proportion, and that's at the point where things start to look a bit uncanny. So we're going to go for a living room, and I think we'll do the medium of 4.5 meters by 6 meters. So I'm going to set this to the maximum of 6 meters. So size 2, and we want to go 6 meters. 6 meters, there we go. I want the floor to be sitting on the ground plane. So for my location on Z, I can put half of 6, which is 3 meters, and that should sit nicely on the floor. There we go. So once we've got our basic shape in, whoops, sorry, I'm having trouble navigating. I've been going to too many different programs. We can further edit this by pressing the N key, which gets us our little options here. So we've got a scale of an XYZ, and we have dimensions of XYZ. So dimensions is what I want. So X and Y, we want one of these to be 4.5. Which then brings us into our standard room shapes. And then ceiling height is a little bit, how can I put it, a little bit odd, in that it has to be a minimum of 7 feet, certainly in the UK, and that's by law. But the average is 8 feet, and I know I'm switching between meters and feet, but sometimes I can't find them all in one. So we want our Z scale. I'm going to go for standard of 8 feet. So if I type 8FT, it will happily convert that to meters for me. And it's come off the ground, but I just need to alter my Z position to half of 2.44, which is happily 1.22. There we go. And that's sitting on the ground. So once you've done that, we can go to Object and Apply. Oh, let me just minimize that. You can't see it, but I can. And then all transforms. And now that will set that properly. If I were to go into edit mode without doing that, it would assume that it's a 6 by 6 meter cube and act accordingly. So applying the transforms sorts out future confusion, if you like. So that's getting our basic room shape in, or room primitive. The next thing to do is add a couple of little details before we can then move on to shaping this room to what we actually want it to look like. So we'll put in the skirting and the coving next, I think. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so now we've got our basic room dimensions, we want to add a couple of little details, and that's the skirting and the coving. So I want the edge tool here, the loop cut, and then I'm just going to click into the viewport on an edge to get a horizontal cut around my model. And then we'll change that tool. And now I'm going to move this down. So if I move it to the ground and then move it back up again, that's one way of doing it. But if I've still got my transform open up here. If you haven't, just press the N key. This is currently telling me is at 1.22 meters high. So if I type in 12 centimeters, it will then go to 12 centimeters off the ground, which is exactly what I want. I want it to be 12 centimeters. That's a fairly average kind of skirting height. Similarly, we want to put a line in to do the coving at the top. So we'll go back into our loop cut and click, and then I'm going to press that key to come out of that. Now if you happen to know the height, which I don't, you can simply type the height of your ceiling minus 12 centimeters in there. But if you don't, it's relatively easy to do. If I select the roof, I can see that it's at 2.4392 meters. So if I copy that with Control C, and then in edge mode, I can double click on my line to select it all, and then Control V, and that will line it up with the roof. But now I want it 12 centimeters down. So use G to move, and then if I move my mouse it will go all over the place, but if I press the Z key or Z key, it will constrain it to the vertical axis. I'm just going to click there, and then in the move transform I'll go minus 12 centimeters. And now I've got a line 12 centimeters from the roof, which is a good size for coving. I'm guessing, you know, some are, you know, greater or less than others, but you know, we'll see. Okay, right, so now I want to put a little extrude on those, and to do that I want to detach the roof and the floor, so or ceiling and floor rather. So if I select those two and go to mesh and use split selection, now they should now be detached from the rest. Now if you know about the L key, if you point at a polygon and press L, it will select everything linked to it, and as you can see it's not selecting the roof or ceiling, and it's not selecting the floor, so we should be good there. Right, so I'm just going to select the ceiling and the floor and press the H key to hide them because I don't need to see them just a moment, and then we're going to put a little extrude in here. So if I select this loop, which I can do by double clicking near the vertical line here. If I do it near the horizontal line, you'll see that it loops down because it's defining the loop as down, and if you do it near the vertical it goes around. If you're too close to one or the other, it will pick for you and you might find it looks inconsistent. So I usually try and pick somewhere around the middle, or at least, you know, away from a vertical edge if I'm doing a horizontal or a vertical. Okay, so I want to extrude this, and for that we need extrude along normal. So I'm going to pick my extrude along normal here, use my drag tool, and then I'm going to type in minus 12 centimeters, and that should then give me a 12 high by 12 deep, or at least quite close to it. And yes, that should be good. So now I can see that, let me deselect that tool, I can see that I've got geometry along the top, which I don't want. So I'm going to double click near that little diagonal line there to select the loop and press delete and dissolve, not dissolve, sorry, just delete faces. There we go. Okay, and then we'll do similar on the bottom. So double click near that vertical, and we're going to extrude along normal. We're going to come inwards, but this time I think only 2 centimeters. There we go. Important distinction, minus 2 centimeters. There we go. Okay, so I'll deselect that tool now, and then I'm just going to go underneath and double click on near that line to select the loop, which it's not doing because I'm probably not close enough. If you can't get close or it's awkward, just select a couple of vertices near where you want to be and press full stop on the numpad key, and it will zoom you into your selection. And then I'll go back to poly selection, double click on that line. There we go. Now I've got the loop, delete and face. There we go. Okay, so that's a bit of the basics. I want to put a little bit of shape into my coving and a little bit of a bevel down here. We'll pop the bevel in first. Just going to select those few vertices down the bottom corner and press full stop on the numpad, and then in edge mode I'll double click on this edge around the top there. We just want to smooth that off a little bit, so it's Control B to bevel, and you'll see that it's quite severe, but just click into the viewport and in the width type 2mm. That's a nice little bevel there, and segments you want 2. If I have 1, it will just slice it off like that. If I want it rounded, I'm going to need at least 2. I'm only going to 2 because I'm at a low level at the moment and I don't want to go too high. If you're at a higher level, you know, if you wanted a high level, you could go to 3, 4, etc. Okay, let's cancel that. Now at the top, whoops, I've changed my viewport rendering style. There we go. At the top, I want to put a bevel or a slice into this piece. Now you'll see that it's not quite 12 centimeters thick. So what we can do for this is I'm going to double click this edge to select everything, and then Control B to bevel. I'm going to slide it out to where it's close to where I want it to be. This time I only want one segment because essentially, you know, this flat shape gives me a lot of leeway to make changes and edits and, you know, update the shape. So I'm just putting one slice in here, and then I'm just going to double click on this in edge mode, not poly mode. Double click on this loop here, and I'm going to press G and Z, and I'm going to move it upwards just to get a nice little curve shape in there, or slanted shape rather. Okay, so that's our absolute basic shape. In the next bit I'm going to show you how to adjust this shape and make the room the shape you want, not just a box. Okay, so I'll talk to you then. Okay then, so to add a bit of shape to this, I'm going to try and get my fingers coordinated so I know what buttons to press. What I want to do is detach some of these walls. I just need to do a couple of them. So if I select polygons here and then use drag box, I'm going to select too much, so let me double click somewhere around the bottom there, and that will select that loop, and then I can go to mesh and split by selection, and I'll do the other side as well. There we go. Double click, let's focus with the full stop on the mouse pad or the numpad. So select, mesh and split selection. There we go. So now if I press L on this wall, whoops, it should only select that wall, which is perfect. It selected that because it was already selected. If I press L on this one now, it will just select that one. Doesn't mean they're connected, it's just adding to the selection. Okay, so if I want to put a bit of shape into this room, what I can do is select a wall. So if I press L there, I'm going to press Shift H, and then in vertex mode I'm just going to grab these vertices on the end and I'm going to move them. Now I don't have them all selected there, and that's because I didn't have select through on. So I'm just going to turn the X-ray mode on up here, and then select over those, and it will select them all. And I'm going to move this say a meter in this direction. So it's G to get into move mode, and then I think X. There we go. So X will move down the X axis, and I'll just type in -1 meter. Just try to be a little bit precise at the moment. And say I want to put a 1 meter corner here. So then I can go to my edge mode, and I can extrude this with the E key. And again, it's not constrained. So if I press Y now, because I'm on the Y axis, I can move that a meter in that direction. There we go. Now the problem is here is that my coving could now be pointing in the wrong direction. In reality, it's in the right direction, so we don't need to do anything there. We'll perhaps come up with that example a little later. Now if I want to put this edge in here, I could press E to extrude, X to constrain, and then move it a meter in that direction. There we go. Let's turn X-ray mode off for the moment. Oops, that's not X-ray mode, that one is. There we go. Now I can press Alt and H, and it will unhide everything. So let me just select my ceiling piece here and press H, and we've got a little corner in there. Now I want to match this edge up to that one, so I'm going to go to vertex mode, turn X-ray on, and then select down there, except to say that I haven't hidden the floor, so that's going to be included in that selection. So I'm going to select it and press H, and then we'll go and reselect our vertices here. Now because I know exactly how far I moved these, I know exactly how far to move this. So G and X, whoops, no, it's not X, it's Y, and then move it, and it's 1 meter. And now when I come out of X-ray mode, everything should exactly match up. So you can change, the shape of your room. You can put cuts in, you can take cuts out. I could even select all of this side, for example, and say actually I want that a little bit deeper, so that will be G. Oops, I need X-ray mode on, of course I do, to select all the vertices there. So G, oops, I'm sorry, I'm getting my fingers mixed up. It's G and X, and then I can move that as far or as close as I want it to. Okay, so how can I get this going in the wrong direction? Okay, so if I select another wall, I'm going to select this one down this end. I'm going to just press H, whoops, let's undo that. Shift H to hide everything else. If I want to put a cut going in the opposite direction here, and I select all of these vertices and move them, say let's make it 2 meters this time, so it'll be G and X -2 meters. So if I want to extrude that backwards now, my coving is kind of pointing in the wrong direction. So what I can do for that is, if I select all of those there, I can use scale to do a negative scale. So if I press S, and this will be in X, and move it around, you'll see that it kind of flips. So if I click in there, what I want this to be is -1. So it's -100%. So it basically flips it without you having to do any complicated rotating. Okay, so now I've done that, I can use my extrude. So E, this will be in Y, so I move that in by a meter. Now my corner is in the right direction. So I can E again, this will be in X, and I'm going to bring it back 2 meters. And then we'll turn X-ray off and unhide everything else, so it's Alt H. Now I need to select my ceiling and my floor. Helps if I'm in poly mode. I'm just going to hide that one and hide that one. And then now these may not line up because I flip those around. It might be it doesn't line up, but we can fix it. So if I select all of these here, it will give me the position, and if I select all of these here, it will give me the same position, and we can work that out. So this in theory should just move a meter, so it's G and X, is it? No, it's G and Y. If I move it a little bit and then type in 1 meter, yeah, you'll see it's slightly out. And because I didn't have X-ray on, I didn't select all my vertices, so let's select those and then we'll move them. So G, Y, 1 meter, and you'll see it doesn't quite match up, and that's because we did that flip. We need to do the flip again actually. So let me just hide that wall, that one, and grab this, and we want S in X. Yeah, just click in and then make sure this one will be -1, so I'm flipping it back in the right direction. Okay, so Alt H will unhide everything, and now let's turn off the X-ray mode. Actually it lines up, and it lines up perfectly, which is wonderful. We like it when it works perfectly. Okay, so my roof doesn't quite fit because I've changed the size of my object, so we can do something about that. If I want to move this across, so G and oops, X, I'll just move that over until it covers. Don't have to be particularly exact with it. And G and Y, I'm never particularly fussy about the bottom. We'll do the same for the bottom, so G and X and G and Y. Now that is a basic room. Might not be the exact shape you want, but I've tried to show you the the ways in which you can build a room and start getting there. We're a long way from finished. Let me just hide the tops. We've got to put some kind of landmark points on it for things like doors and windows. So we'll have a look at that next. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so before I put in the landmark, I'm just going to join everything together. So if I go to X-ray mode, whoops, wrong button, and just select over the whole of the mesh. What I want to do is merge any identical vertices together. So we can go to mesh and clean up, and where are we? Oh, my brain's gone. Merge by distance. There we go. So distance is 0.0001, very close together, and that's suggested, although I seem to have done it without doing it. Let me just press L to see if I have done. Yes, I have done. So let me undo a few times. There we go. So I'll just select everything, and then actually I think it's the M key, by distance, and then 0.01. Down the bottom you'll see it says removed 36 vertices, and then it disappeared quickly, obviously. So if I click off to set that, and if I press L, now I've got everything linked together. Now I can cut all of these in one go. So the landmark I want to put on is the top of the door. Now the top of the door basically is the same as the top of the window, so it's the same landmark. So if I just nip into edge mode, I'll just deselect everything for the moment, and I'll take my loop cut. I'm going to click into there and then come off of the tool, and then in my Z parameter I can type in the height I want. Now what we're looking at here is, so standard door height, certainly in whatever region this is 2 meters and 4 centimeters, so 2.04. Now that's the door height, but it's not necessarily the frame height. So what I want to do is add to that just a little bit to give me some frame margin. So well, let's say 2 inches, 2.5, about 5 centimeters, say. So I want this to be 209. So if I go back to there, I can type in 2 meters 9, and it will go up to that point. So this should then mark the top of the doors and the top of the windows. And in the next couple of sections, what I'm going to do is cut in a door and cut in a window, and that will be essentially our primitive room. So I will talk to you then. Okay, let's come out of X-ray mode. Now, depending upon where you want the door, what we need to do is just cut in a slice. So we'll use our cut tool, and I'll pop a door in, say there. And what I need to do for this is then widen this, and we'll do that with the bevel tool. Now, depending upon the kind of door you're doing, I'm going to do 826 millimeters. We need to add a little bit of margin for our door frame. So I want 800 and what's that, 82, so I want 92.6. I think my maths is not the best. So let's get that back up. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. I want blender. There we go. So if I control B to bevel and just click into the viewport, I can tell it how far I want it to be. So I want it to be 92.6 centimeters, and I want 2 segments. Oops, 2. Now I think you can tell from that I've done it entirely wrong, because that's 92 centimeters either side. I actually only want it 92 centimeters both sides. So I need to divide this by 2. So what will that be? 413. 41.3 centimeters. There we go. So now I've got a hole which is going to allow me to cut in a door. It's the right height already, and it's the right width. That should be good, and we can verify it's the right width, I think, by selecting, say, these two, and in our overlays somewhere around here is line length, edge length. There we go. So that's 413, 413. No, it's wrong, isn't it? Let me do that bevel again. So it's Control and B, and just click in. 90, what did I say? 92.6, not meters, 92.6 centimeters, but I want half of that. It is 4, no, it's not 41.3, it's 463, isn't it? So 46.3 centimeters. Oh, losing my mind today. There we go. So that little difference can, you know, make a big difference to your whole model, because, you know, just one little proportion out and it will start to look a bit weird. Okay, so let's let's delete this bottom piece. If I go to X-ray mode, I just want to delete out that little bit of skirting there. Delete and faces, and then we can drop this to the bottom. I'm going to detach this first, so select the polygons. Let's come out of X-ray mode because that can make selection a bit weird. There we go. And then it's mesh and split by selection, and then these I want on the floor. So up here, see it's 12 centimeters at the moment. If I set that to 0, it will go to the floor. Okay, so now if I select this, I want to put a door frame in, so we can inset this. So we can use insert here and bring that in, and we want to bring it in just 5 centimeters. There we go. Notice that of course we've got this bottom bit which we can delete. We don't want that, so delete key and faces, and then I can select my 2 edges on the bottom and set their Z position to 0. Okay, it's going well. So I'm just going to extrude the door out now, or the door frame. Whoops. So double click next to one of my horizontal lines there. We can use the extrude along normals, and I'll bring that out a bit just to cover the skirting. So the skirting came out 2 centimeters, so we could make this say 3 centimeters, so it'd be -3 centimeters, and that just happened to be almost exactly where it was, give or take. Just going to select these bottom polygons because I don't need them, and press delete and faces. And now if I double click on those lines with shift held down for the second lot, so double click on the first line, shift double click on the second, and then we can control B to bevel, just give it a little bit of movement, and then we'll have say 2 millimeters. Just a small bevel to soften it up, because there are no, you know, fully sharp edges in, you know, in reality, especially for wood. You know, if you've got plain wood, you know, it might look very sharp, but there's a tiny little bevel there, or tiny little curve. When you've painted it, there'll be a bit more of a curve, so you know, nothing's truly sharp. Okay, so now we have a door and we have a door frame, and the next then is to pop a window in. So I will talk to you then. What I'm actually going to do before I do that is take some unneeded geometry out. I don't need this middle line, so I'm going to double click on the door and then press delete and dissolve edges, and then we'll do that on the wall part as well. So delete and dissolve edges. There we go, nice and tidy. Okay, so I'll talk to you in the next one where we'll cut in a window, and I'll talk to you then. Okay, so for a window, it's a very similar job. I'll perhaps pick a different wall for this. So I want to put a cut down the middle. So we'll use the loop cut. I'll just pop that there. And now I want to give it some width and some depth, in fact. Excuse me. So I've got my kind of standard Windows thing here in inches, unfortunately. I'm going to go perhaps for one of these middle ones, the 48-inch, and well, let's do 48 by, let's have a nice wide one, 48 by 60. Okay, so for the width then, let's go back to Blender. It's Control and B to bevel with that line selected. I can draw that out, and of course, knowing from my mistake earlier, I just want this at 30 inches, so it's, you know, 60 inches across. But now we want to set the height, and that was what, 48, I think. Yes, 48. So I want to know this position in Z, which is 209. So first of all, I'm going to put a loop cut in, and then with that loop cut selected, let's move off there. There we go. I'm going to move that up to 2.09 meters, and then I'll use G and Z to move it down minus 48 inches. There we go. So now I've got the window kind of aperture cut in, and oops, almost pressed the stop button there because it looks remarkably like the polygon button, which you can't see of course because yeah, it's hidden. So I'll delete my middle line first because I really don't need that. Let's press delete and dissolve, and then I'll select my polygon here. I'm going to give it a little bit of a frame. I want the inset tool, and we'll just drag that in a teeny tiny bit. I think I'll make it something like 2 centimeters. There we go. Actually, I'm just going to make that 1 centimeter. It's not going to be by frame, it's just going to be an area which I can use to bevel off the edge. Okay, so now we'll extrude along normals. I'm going to take that in. Now this might depend upon how thick your window sills or how thick your walls are going to be. I'm just going to put it in, what's that, about 10 centimeters. There we go. Okay, now we can put a little bit of a frame in. So we want our inset again, bring it in, let's make it 2 centimeters, and then we can extrude again. We did a lot of extruding here, and take it in. I'm going to take it in 2 centimeters, just like I did for the frame width. And now we're into the actual window territory. So this is what the window will be in, but this will be the window. And I want to detach this now, or split it. So it's mesh and split selection. And I can cut this in half. Let me do Shift and H just to hide everything else, makes life a little easier. I want to cut it down the middle. And then with poly mode, I'll select both of my polygons. Whoops, I need to be on the proper tool there. There we go. And this time I want to inset faces. Okay, actually I think I might have put it in there. There we go. Inset faces, and let's make it a jolly consistent 2 centimeters. But I don't want it around the edge, I want it around each polygon. So for that I'm going to select the individual option on the inset faces tool, and that will give me 2 different panes. So now I've got like split panes, and then we'll extrude that again and just bring that in a little, again about 2 centimeters. And there we have our basic window. Now this is going to be a sliding window, which I'm not going to make work, but I do want to actually you know, look like it's a split window that will slide. So I'm going to go to my select tool there. I'll select that middle polygon there, and then Control and plus on the number pad, and I'll press that twice, and that expands my selection. Now I can split this off from here and move it. So let us go to mesh and split by selection, and now to give it a little bit of realism I'm going to bring it forward. So G, and what are we on, Y, and to be really consistent 2 centimeters. Okay, and now to finish the illusion I'm going to join these up. So if I whoops get really close, I want to select those 2 edges that are empty and facing each other, and we can go to edge and bridge, and it will bridge those together. Right, so Alt H to unhide everything else, and we're inside the room. And we can see we've got a nice little window that looks about right. So they are the absolute basics of a room. You know, if you repeat that on different walls, you know, well, initially, you know, from your primitive room, you can shape it out how you want it. You can do all sorts of things to, you know, make your walls different shapes, and you can cut your door in, or doors even, and you can cut your windows in. There's one thing I know that I haven't done, and that's just put some shape into the coving, and let's do that. So first of all, that's 242 a bit. Let's copy that, and what I want to do is split this. So if I pop in there, and then we'll select it, I want to paste in that value, so it goes to the top. There we go. Now I just need to do this a little bit. So for each of these, I need to select the title, so where it is. It's 242, but that's in the okay. This is working. So this is my line I'm going to do. So EG and my is the axis. So I want these to match two axes here. So if I copy my axis, and then select my tops. Actually, this is really by doing it. Slot in the next one. So those delete that, delete and dissolve. It is, and I'll come back and do the files as well. So I'll put it in. Okay, so way back early in the video, I think I made some sort of mistake. I think both the mistake in thinking, because I think I was thinking Modo wise and how I would do it in Modo, not how I would do it in Blender. So just to make sure I haven't made a complete mess of this, I'm going to delete this and recreate it. So if I double click there, whoops, not there, there, whoops, not there either apparently. Oh, come on, there we go. And use Control plus and Control plus again, that will select the whole of the coving, and I'll delete that. And so press the delete key and then faces, and then with our edge tools we can double click around the top and press E to extrude and Z to strain to vertical. I'll just click there and type in 12 centimeters. There we go. So now we've got the basic shape back, we can extrude that out. So double click there to select all around, and then we want the extrude along normal, and we'll click in, whoops, and grab the handle and bring that in. And of course I want to bring that in minus 12 centimeters. Okay, so the part of the mistake of thinking that I had done was thinking I could use a particular tool in Modo to do this in a particular way, but it doesn't work the same in Blender. Simple as that. So in Blender, this is what I was attempting to do. So let me circle up there. If I double click on this line, what we can do is a bevel, and a bevel with a profile. So when I run this, it's going to do it with the profile, but I'm going to undo it so that we can see what we're doing. Okay, so let me bevel that out a little bit to say 11 centimeters. Perhaps not that far actually, let's make it 10 centimeters. There we go. Now what you'll see is something like this, because the default is this super ellipse, but what we want to do is actually make some sort of profile out of this. So let me just open up that. So if you click into custom, you will find that you get a profile in here. This is one I've defined earlier, but you know what we want to do is get rid of it. So if I right click on that point, no, it won't let me do anything. I was just trying to see how I could delete it, but I can't see how to delete it. What's this button here? Toggle profile clipping, reverse path. I can reverse the path, there we go, and reset curve, that's what I want. Okay, so let's reset view. So you will get a line similar to this, and as you can see it's straight here, and if I click on this line I can move my curve around, and as you can see it responds accordingly. So you can do quite a simple curve like this one, which is just quite plain but effective, or you can add additional points and make it more complicated. So you can add as many points as you like in here to get a nice, shape for your coving that, is what you want. There we go, let's push that up. And yeah, for some reason it's not going up as high as it is going in. I think that's, I think I perhaps should have beveled it out more, but hindsight is a wonderful thing. So yes, let's have a look at that. So that's okay. If it's not conforming to your shape very well, it's likely you haven't got enough segments. So just up your segments until you get to a point where you're content and happy with the shape. Obviously, the more points you've got, the more of these segments you're going to need. Okay, so I want that to go up a little bit more, so let me just click off that tool. What I want to do is select it, so let's double click somewhere around the middle there, and then Control plus and see how close I was. Not close enough, I'm too different, so let's try this line here, plus, no, I've probably got an odd number of numbers, or odd number of bits. So actually, yeah, let's grab that one. Oops, come on. Oh goodness, my fingers are failing me, I've been doing it too long. Right, Control plus, and then Shift, double click, no, Shift double click, there we go. Now I've got everything. So what I can do is, first of all, I can scale in Z, and that will allow me to just adjust it a little bit. Whoops, it's all going a bit nuts. That's too high, of course, so 1.1, just to give it a little extra height, 1.4 maybe, and then G and Z, and now I want to move it up. There we go. So I've still got my nice profile, but I've moved everything up. The only thing I really want to do is flatten this out a little bit. So I'll do G and Z and bring this down. There we go. So now we've got a nice kind of coving in the top. And you could use, depending upon how much geometry you want, how complicated you want it, you can really get into those curves to make it right. And yes, I think that's about it for this basic shell. I hope you found something useful in it. I hope I didn't bumble too much. I am going to finish here. If I get a good response to this video, I'll continue and add in details, materials, UV mapping, add some detail to doors and things like that, and I'll possibly show you a way of creating, say, a library of window shapes, which you can insert and extract as you want, and door shapes similarly. Okay, so yes, enough waffling. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you soon. Any comments below, of course.